What is up, basketball fans? Welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops. And surely nothing dramatic has happened in the NBA in the past
Nah,
couple of days. Nothing. So
never.
probably just be a run of the mill show. Steve, Jake, and Donnie, as always, just talking normal hoops. Couple weeks into the season, nothing crazy. Wrong. The
I just
Brooklyn
wish it was
Nets.
someone else.
I
Why
know.
is it the same team?
Oh my god!
And they
I'm
they
glad you.
can't get out of the spotlight. They can't.
They really
It's.
can't, and
I want to
it's
talk about
just
them.
for shit like this. It's
For a
just
team
for
that nobody
always
cares
shit
about
like
in
this,
their own
right?
city, they are taking up a lot of national headspace.
Yeah. It probably would have been just better if we got like some crazy trade drama throughout the summer with Kyrie and KD. I think we probably could have avoided having to talk about them not only throughout the summer, but to
Mhm.
start the regular season too. But no, here we are. We might as well just call this the Brooklyn Nets chatter podcast. Because that's what it seems like it turns into at least a couple times a month. But as all of you know, Steve Nash and the Brooklyn Nets have parted ways, which means Steve Nash got fired because he was doing a poor job as the head coach. But who can blame him? The Brooklyn Nets are an absolute mess. Too many personalities, too many egos. And then literally right after, probably like at most an hour went by before we saw the reports of Ime Udoka becoming the front runner to land the Nets job, and then ultimately him leaving the Boston Celtics after they granted him the permission to interview, and the Nets give it to Ime Udoka. So within, I don't know if they've set a game of when he's going to start coaching, but we saw them play last night with an interim head coach. They lost to the Chicago Bulls. Kyrie played horribly again. And here we are with the Brooklyn Nets that are playing bad and now have a head coach with just the utmost drama behind him as you can have.
So I don't think it's like they haven't officially signed Ime, right? But it was pretty much right after Shams and Woj were like, this is gonna happen very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some kind of vetting and like I don't even know what the process. It's such a weird situation from the Ime side of it because why did the Celtics not really just fire this guy in the first place if he was going to be allowed to coach? What is the point? Like all the verbiage surrounding everything is super weird. And if he gets hired as a head coach of another team, he's going to have to sit in front. Like the Nets have to know that first press conference that's all that's going to be talked about. Like this, we haven't heard. Have we heard from Ime? We haven't heard. Well, Kyrie's a whole different thing. We haven't heard from Ime yet at all since then. Though. So that's like the weirdest thing. Touching on the Kyrie thing, if you guys, anybody who wasn't aware, posted on his Twitter the other day, some movie that people who actually watched the video said it was very anti-Semitic, spreading anti-Semitic verbiage and ideas and everything else. I listen to Bomani Jones a couple times a week, and I take this from him because he went through and he was like, I thought about watching it, and then I looked and saw it was 3 hours and 40 minutes, and it was $12 for the rental. Now that might have been a hike price because they were like, let's take advantage of this attention Kyrie Irving's tweet brought to it. True. But he made the best point I've heard anybody make about this. Do you really think Kyrie Irving watched all 3 hours and 40 minutes of this film? No. He is just.
Did you hear his explanation too? He was just like, yeah, that's what I was doing that night. So I posted it on my socials, watched the movie, and then didn't worry about it.
For someone that wants us to think he's so smart, that would be probably the dumbest assumption of social media in the world I've ever heard in my life. So we know why he's doing it. It's probably in support of Kanye in some way, or just him trying to put out a subliminal message and everything else, whatever. But that's another part of it. He's basically on what team is going to trade for him at this point. Who knows what kind of suspension the league? I'm sure the league and the Nets are talking about something to do with this, regardless if he took it down, anything else. But the situation itself is just more of a tire fire anyways. So I just wanted to give the Kyrie background to then adding in the head coach who just got basically shadow fired by a team, your Boston Celtics, who made the NBA Finals last year. Not just some scrub organization, the team who was in the finals last year. They're gonna bring him in, and he's gonna in his first press conference. I feel bad as a PR professional in my day job for the Nets PR. Honestly, I would have quit during the summer from the Nets PR team, but now I think they all should quit yesterday, definitely. And what about the Steve Nash portion of this though? Either of you guys, because did he just not get the job done, or was this inevitable when KD basically called for his head?
I mean, I think that's kind of what it was, right? Like, he didn't ever win that locker room over, and I don't think he was ever really a great head coach. He didn't really have the resume. But once you lose the players, once you lose the star, NBA is a star-driven league. And when KD says he wants him out, the Nets want to do whatever they can to try to keep KD. I think that's kind of what we've seen at this point, because Kyrie's turned into a complete mess. We don't really even know what we're seeing from Ben Simmons, even though like we've seen him a little bit, but KD
How
is the
about
guy.
The rumor on Nets Twitter today that there was a Western Conference team that's shopping shooters that said Ben Simmons was offered in a trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's from Nets reporters too, not another team's.
I mean, I don't hate it, but I think the Nets have figured out that the only guy that they can probably try to keep and trust at this point is KD, and he's been deservedly so earning that type of trust because he's been balling out this year. But when KD calls for a coach's head, we've seen this all the time with other stars. When they say that we don't like a coach, very next year that coach is gone. And slow start to the season for the Nets. Kevin Durant playing great, more stuff going on, more distractions beside everything that's happening on the court. I think it was inevitable that Steve Nash was going to get fired. Now, I don't think he's a great head coach. I thought he was a great player, and players sometimes just don't translate to good coaches. But you have to be a tough head coach, and you have to be someone who's able to control this locker room, because this locker room is all over the place. And Steve Nash, I think, was the opposite personality of that. So the Nets are moving on. And they're going the complete opposite of Steve Nash is where they're moving on. But, you know, I don't think it should be shocking to anyone that Steve Nash is gone, especially this early in the year. I think a lot of us, we were talking about that we thought he could have been gone before the year started.
And it's interesting the way the reports came out, because Woj said that they were fired and the Nets said that they mutually parted ways. And I feel like maybe it's firing officially, but Steve was also like, I'm not doing this shit anymore. And that was kind of the discussion that Marks led in, at least what they had. They weren't responding to Nash. Obviously, I think we could all see that they weren't responding.
Yeah, that was his exact quote, right?
Yeah,
like they literally just
from
weren't
Steve
listening.
Nash, they weren't responding. Yeah. They're not responding to me in that vein. But also maybe a guy who's fed up, didn't ask for all this drama that he's dealing with.
I don't think anyone would ask for this.
That's where I agree, Steve. Like, I don't think Steve Nash is a good head coach, but at the same time, like Steve Kerr put it perfectly. Yeah, exactly. Steve Kerr said, like, I would have failed the exact same way he did in this situation. Like, he basically was set up for failure. Now, I don't think he can get off that easy with like last year, because last year he still coached poorly and there wasn't as much drama. Of course, still a very tough situation to try to coach. But this year, like, I think anyone who had this job is going to get a pass. It's crazy between Ben Simmons finally being back and then not looking like he's even a help to the team when he's on the court, already missing games now. Kyrie, between, you know, the anti-Semitic stuff that he's putting out online and then not performing on the court. And then you have solid KD, who is the only one performing well, but apparently doesn't like you and asks for your job and for you to be gone. So it's like, who could actually even succeed in that role? I mean, if Steve Kerr, who's one of the best coaches in the NBA, is saying that he wouldn't be able to, I don't think anyone could. It's just a wild, wild situation. And it's crazy because we say who could coach this group, like who can actually get a hold of these guys. It's Ime. Ime is the guy, but
Ime, a guy who knows Sean Marks, like they're great friends going back.
Very close with Kevin Durant.
Very close with Durant. Very close with Kyrie and from
Patty Mills.
Patty Mills. Yeah.
It's obviously a perfect situation, but like not with the past, not with what just happened a few months ago.
We don't know. Why are the Nets willing to give him a job?
Right.
The Celtics were trying to fire him. So there's some sort of level of disconnect between organizationally between Brooklyn and Boston. For either obviously the level of desperation for Brooklyn is way higher than Boston in that moment. Boston was trying to maintain and clearly knew the building blocks they had and has a coach that they like in Joe Mazzulla, who is clearly turning out to be doing a good job so far, at least very early on. But Brooklyn is desperate. But if he was seriously basically fired or suspended for a year, what is the disconnect between organizations that he will be allowed to coach potentially 10 games into the season compared to not being allowed to coach for the whole season? And if he does sign with the Nets, then we're going to find out some of those, hopefully
we have to, right?
Those answers. Like
you have
to get something.
Very minimum. We must, because you can't just.
It can't just be like I've atoned for my sins. I'm apologizing for everybody I hurt and move on. Like
you can't go from being like potentially suspended the entire year to you're the first guy the Nets want for their head coach. Have you either of you guys seen the show Baggage, the late night show the game station network or whatnot with Jerry Springer? It's like he opened up the first 2 bags and the Nets chose him without revealing the final big bag of what it is. And it's, if they do know and they're not telling us, then all right, whatever. But we still don't really know everything that happened. And it's just like, it was the quickest turnaround, right? It was like Steve Nash is gone, and within 12 hours, we're getting Ime Udoka.
It was like an hour.
It was like an hour. Yeah, it was the first name that popped up too. It was Ime Udoka. They threw D'Antoni, whoever else in there, but it was obvious.
Snyder, I think. Yeah,
it was obvious we knew who they were targeting. Number one, like when you see that,
they got to throw a couple other names in there
because nobody was even thinking. Were you thinking when you saw Steve Nash was fired? Ime Udoka is definitely getting hired to the Nets. No, I thought D'Antoni. I wasn't even thinking about Quinn Snyder. I was like D'Antoni. Oh, they got Jacques Vaughn. Like Jacques Vaughn didn't get a fair shot. Maybe they just keep him. Like that's where my head went to, and then I saw that Udoka, and then it's just like, what the fuck? Like it was already, and I know for you, Donnie, it's such a confounding story, and nobody really has any answers anywhere. And just this turn of it, what's it gonna be like? He coaches Brooklyn, and there's a game in Boston. What is that going to be like? Kyrie and Ime Udoka.
I don't know if this game's in Boston, but there is. The first Celtics Nets game is December 4th, so it's not far away.
Oh, man.
It's a little more than a month here, and it's going to be interesting to say the least. The thing that's crazy, Jake, and like you kind of started to allude to it there, it's like we try to form opinions on this, but it's so hard to when you still don't know. It's like the Celtics organization, for all we know, could have like at least a little bit of fault in this. Like they could have either.
The only person I've trusted on the matter so far is Richard Jefferson tweeted like very shortly after having, he's like, when you guys find out what this is about, and did like the little that emoji and then put a Mean Girls post under it. So Richard Jefferson wouldn't say anything unless he knew it. And that just made it sound like it was like some of the most ridiculous drama we could possibly hear, and that's why it's not being covered up because of how bad it was. It's because of how ridiculous it's going to see once we get to that point. And that could be the disconnect in the organization. If this say, I'm not going to speculate on who this could be and anybody else, but if this relationship was with certain people, if you're in a workplace and you have a relationship with a certain superior compared to another superior or even level of person, that's going to affect people differently, every person differently when you find out. And maybe it was just the wrong person, and this is how it spun out of control. Like that's always been kind of my idea, is it was just wrong person, wrong time more than anything else. Because this is not unheard. I guarantee you it's not unheard of what happened from the
and like you have to assume it. Like, and I don't. Again, we have to choose our words carefully here. But you have
the next game, the first game in Boston, by the way, is not till February 1st, so we got some time till.
Oh wow, yeah, we got a lot of time.
The first two are in Brooklyn. Anyways, keep going.
No, it's crazy because like we have to assume that it's nothing, and if it is like a legal matter, it can't be that bad because the NBA hasn't even like tried to look into this at all. Like. No. They let the Celtics. Yeah, they let the Celtics like take their course of action. They suspended them for a year, and then it was hush. And like, and now they're not. As far as I know, they're not looking into it again
for a year.
And I feel bad. Like I feel bad for the players at this point too, because these guys loved Ime. Obviously, they bought into him so quickly. He brought him to the finals. like bonds were made. But then I'm seeing these rumors yesterday, and of course, all of this is just rumors. It's just stuff that we don't know anything because nothing's been confirmed. But I'm starting to read yesterday that there's a certain player who was like a legit, like got a lot of minutes, was important to this team that they didn't name names, but apparently butted heads with Ime since he walked in the building. Never saw eye to eye. Didn't agree with his coaching system. And so, like, I think a lot of people think to Marcus Smart because, like, that's like, I think just from his personality and like how he's been with other players in the past, maybe people are like, oh, he's the guy who's hard to get along with. But then Smart comes out with this quote today and says, Ime's name got slandered and slaughtered. It was, he'll probably never coach again. And a couple months later, he's going to be the coach of one of our biggest rivals. It's tough. It makes no sense. So, like, that makes me think it wasn't Smart who was butting heads with him. And obviously, these players
I would think it's
like,
the guy who signed with Donda Sports. That's who I think he's butting heads with. But
that's my thought too. Because Jalen, as soon as Woj tweeted that Ime was going to be the coach of the Nets, shared the Woj tweet on his Instagram story, and like Celtics beat writers are speculating that like this is him like kind of being like, okay, I'm glad you're the one that went to Brooklyn because people believe that Ime was like the one pushing hard to trade Jalen for KD when Brad wasn't really about it. So maybe that's where the feud began between those two. Like Ime never really believed in him. And Jalen actually made a comment after the Wizards, after the win over the Wizards on Sunday, where he was saying it's nice having a leader and like a coach who doesn't think you have a ceiling or like something like that. Like something about like capping his potential. He's like, Joe like believes in me and like believes I can get better and like this and that. So signs point to Jalen, but like either way, this is super like, let's not forget how weird this is for the Celtics players as well.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine what it's like in that locker room. Like not even like just today, yesterday,
and for Missoula,
and for Missoula. Yeah. And also, you got the great point I read in the ESPN article. I think it was Windhorse who had a nice write up on the Sean Marks press conference yesterday. A lot of Ime's staff is now on the Celtics. If he gets a job in Brooklyn, how many of those guys are not during the season, but Joe Mazzulla is going to know that they're going to have some of them at least are going to have wandering eyes towards Brooklyn. Right. That's going to be a weird dynamic the whole season too. It's just the fact that there has been really no time to sit with this. Like if Ime was going to, if the reason for the suspension, I'm assuming, I keep asking why they do it. It was because they wanted him to go away for a year. Everybody did let Joe Mazzulla get comfortable, and then they'd
let cooler heads prevail.
Yeah. And probably
gotta work things out.
Yeah, and now I think they see an opportunity for them to kind of just cut bait and be like, all right, we can get rid of this dude and get rid of the headache and send him somewhere else. And it's just, I don't think anybody thought it was going to happen this quickly. No. Only 7 games into the season. Like I didn't think this would be a week 3 topic about a coaching change and Ime Udoka coming back at all. Definitely not.
Well, let me ask you guys this: do you guys think Ime fixes the Nets? Like I don't. Like you could argue this is a bad move for the Nets organization.
Steve, you go.
I mean, you can argue it. I think if we're just taking everything outside of basketball, just set aside all the distractions, just talk about head coach. I think Ime's a much better head coach than Steve Nash. I think he got a lot out of that Celtics team last year. And the biggest thing we saw with the Celtics team, which is why I kind of give him a little bit the benefit of the doubt in Brooklyn, is that team got better as the year went on. They started off slow, Donnie. They started off really slow. They didn't look great, and they got better as the year went on. And not only did they get better, they became the best defense in the NBA. They went from not a great defense to the best defense. And what is one thing Brooklyn is doing this year? They aren't playing defense whatsoever. They've been awful at defense. I think Jake takes the over in every Brooklyn game that's existed this year because for the simple fact that they just don't play defense. So that if we're just taking all the distractions, take that all, just pretend it's just in a vacuum, Steve Nash versus Udoka as a head coach. I think Udoka is going to get a lot more out of this Nets team than Nash will. And also, too, we talked about it with how Kevin Durant did not like Steve Nash. He was basically calling for his head. Kevin Durant likes Ime Udoka, or so we think. Kevin Durant changes his opinion, it feels like every single week. But for the time being, if your star player's buying into your new head coach, it's going to help your team overall. Now, I don't think he's just going to turn the Brooklyn Nets into a great team and to the potential that I think a lot of people thought they'd have. it may be a slower process. But if we're taking all the distractions set aside, which you really can't do when you're fully evaluating this, but just from a coaching perspective, I think it's a better move. However, we still don't really know everything that's, all the distractions, everything that's coming with Udoka to the Nets. So we will see and we'll find out. I'm sure more news will leak, especially once he starts coaching for Brooklyn. But if we're looking at as a head coach, Dunny, and you're a Celtics guy, he was a great head coach last year. We can't dispute that fact. He was a great head coach. He got the best out of his team, and the Celtics were the most improved team in the NBA season last year. They were not a championship caliber, borderline, a very good playoff team at the start of the year. And then at the end of the year, they were one of the best teams in the NBA.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Like, coach for coach, obviously a huge upgrade, in my opinion. It's just, and I think obviously this is miles better for KD, which is scary. Like, we might see a better version of Kevin Durant with this.
He's going nuts right now.
Yeah, but the thing that like just can't get myself to be like, oh my god, like we're missing. Now we're just letting our coach who brought us to the NBA championship walk, and he's going to our rival, and Kyrie's there, and we didn't get KD this summer, and it's going to be a mess for me. Like, I'm not thinking like that until I see guys like Simmons and Kyrie be able to buy in for this head coach too. Because I don't think KD's so good he doesn't need to buy in. I mean, we saw that with Nash. He didn't even like the guy, and he was still balling. Kyrie is supposedly bought in, and last night he still shoots 2 for 12 some games and puts up 4 points. Like, when Kyrie's head's out of it, he's out of it. And we haven't come across anyone except for maybe LeBron for a few years that could get Kyrie to just play basketball and kind of like not let his head spiral out of control. So
he's the reason I don't care who the coach is, because that guy is still being relied upon, and clearly it's just more and more unreliable as it like.
Agreed.
What depths can Kyrie go to at this point to tank a season? Because he's done basically just about everything, and there's no sign. There's no reason to think it's going to stop.
Yeah,
like there's no reason to think he's not going to do something else dumb in a month.
The thing we started the show with, like the whole anti-Semitic thing, like that's not going away. You talked about it, Jake. Like, we haven't seen any league repercussions, but like I don't think this is the end of this situation. Charles Barkley called for him to be suspended.
He hasn't done media since the press conference that you referred to earlier. He's going to have to. The second he steps in front of cameras again, it's going to be right back. If the media is being responsible, those are the first questions coming out. So he is going to have to answer to this again. And to that point, I don't know. I don't trust him to keep his composure in that situation unless there is some kind of action that's been taken.
Apparently the Nets don't either, because I'm sorry, that's lame as hell. That's weak. That's cowardly from Sean Marks to do it.
How do you not get suspended indefinitely?
What, dude? Like, Marshawn Lynch used to get fined for giving bad answers at his press conference, let alone just saying he's not going to talk to the media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is wild. Like, it can't be both ways with athletes like this. And like, and I'm not trying to rant here. I know like
it is just this guy. It's this guy though.
Right. It's like, when are we going to
athlete.
stop, dude? Like, you can't just say or do whatever you want and then also make these millions. Like, it's kind of the same thing Stephen A always says. It's like, dude, your box office, you put asses in seat. Everyone knows that about you, but that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think as long as Brooklyn has that issue going on, and then they're bringing in Ime, who's a great coach, huge upgrade over Nash. Don't disagree with that, but like, they're bringing all the baggage that's coming with him as well, and we don't know. Maybe it is just all this negatives towards the Boston Celtics, and he's, he can explain himself now, and that's that. But super sticky situation for the Nets. I know a lot of fans are excited about the coaching change, but I think they got to see like a slight improvement of play. The Nets are sitting at 2-6 right now. Like, I think they got bigger issues or bigger fish to fry. But yeah, that's here we are, 25 minutes in, and
talking nuts.
Talking Nets drama.
Talking Brooklyn Nets.
Let's get into let's before we get into our preview for tonight's matchup that could divide this podcast for the rest of the time. at this point. Let's just take a look at the standings a couple weeks in, guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is always fun for me. I think we look at this right now. I'm gonna take screenshots of this, and then we're gonna look at it again in like a month or whatever, just random times throughout the season. Because I think what people, it's just Twitter in general. People just overreact to like the early seasons of everything like that, and it's just good proof to like watch the schedules play out and be like, oh yeah, these standings end up making sense. You got to get there somehow. You got to trust the journey of it. But it is just interesting to see play out. So I'm just gonna ask you guys if anything, what in particular strikes you. We'll start with the East standings here, and if there's just anything that jumps out at you looking at this right now.
East looks a lot more realistic than the West. We'll get to the West. East looks a lot more realistic to me. Big one is Miami and Brooklyn. I think we were all down on Brooklyn, but I don't think they're going to be a 2-6 bottom 3 team in the East. And then Miami, I think Miami's just been playing well. They've had just a tough schedule. They've lost some weird games. I expect Miami to bounce back. But other than that, like you look at the top 7 teams in the East, maybe throw Miami or Brooklyn in at the 8th spot, but you look at those top 7, you can interchange those. That's kind of a pretty good top 7 of what it could end up like at the end of the year.
Easily.
Like the East to me has been very like realistic, besides just a couple outliers.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the Heat because to me, when I watch the Miami Heat, I agree with you, Steve. I don't think they're playing poorly. I don't know how much further they can go with this roster the way it's constructed.
Are they just getting old?
I think it's that, and I think they just need to make a trade. Like I don't think the games where they're playing guys like Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, even like a guy like Gabe Vincent, who's a much better defender than those 3 other guys I just mentioned, but much smaller. Like to me, when I see them like actually lose games, it's because Strus is in there, shooting the lights out. That's great. Duncan Robinson's hitting threes. Tyler Hero, even when he gets going, all 3 of those guys are liabilities at the defensive end. And then you throw Gabe Vincent in, who's actually a pretty good on-ball defender, but he gets a ton of minutes and he's just too undersized. Like you play a Milwaukee or a Boston or a Cleveland who has these big starting lineups where all their players are pretty skilled for the most part. You're not going to get away with those guys playing 25 plus minutes a game for you. And I mean, we know how many trade talks Duncan Robinson's been in the last couple of years. It seems like they just need to get a deal done and kind of reconstruct a little bit. And then Jake, I think on top of all that, you have a guy like Lowry who will have big nights for you, but there's
Lowry you can't count on every night.
No, he's super consistent. Yeah. And there's sometimes where he'll just refuse to shoot. Like Kyle Lowry will be wide open.
I think my biggest thing, Miami is the biggest thing that I wanted to mention as well. Everything else kind of looks the same. It's Bam last year, 19 points a game. 2 years ago, 18.7. He's down to 17.6 again. I know it's early, but this is a guy that if to take the next step, we really wanted to see his offensive game start.
Yes.
We know how great defensively he is. We know the type of playmaker he can be, but really just offensively has not taken that step. And he's also down in rebounds this year too. So it's a worrying trend. And I wonder if it has to do with the effects of the other 2 stars advancing in age and not being able to take as much off his plate, and him not being able to handle that role as much as a scorer, a facilitator, whatever else. Because right now, him and Hero are both tied 17.6 points. Off one of them needs to be at 20. Like it's just for this team to be successful, one of them, and realistically, Jimmy Butler leading the team with 21.5, both of them should be at 20 or right around 20. And if those are the 2 guys that are your building blocks for the future, if they can't be 20-point-a-game players, then what are we doing here? Like to your point, Dunny, where is that scoring coming from then if it's not an inconsistent Lowry and a guy in Hero who you can't trust defensively every single night? So it's a mess there. Any other thoughts on the East?
I think
everything else looks good to me.
Shout out Milwaukee Bucks. I did not think they would start this hot, especially they don't have Middleton right now. They still look pretty damn good. I thought their roster got thinner. I didn't think they'd be this good, but it is Giannis. It is the Milwaukee Bucks. So just want to give them their flowers.
The only thing I'll say about the Bucks, they played 5 games at home, and they've had a very soft schedule so far. We haven't really seen the Bucks on a huge road test, but besides the first game when they beat up on Philly, well, they didn't beat up on Philly, but they beat Philly. It was a pretty good game, but it was a defensive game. They were really making Philly making Philly earn every basket, every possession.
Yeah.
But since then, it's kind of been easy going for the Bucks at home. I'm going to look up real quick. Yeah, they played the Rockets at home, the Nets at home, the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Pistons at home. Those 5 teams, maybe the Knicks kind of a little exception there, but the 4 of those
teams. The Pistons game was close.
Don't play defense. Game was close. Just don't play defense. Yeah, and they play the Pistons, I think, again tonight, right? They play the Pistons I think they're home again, which is crazy. Just Milwaukee feels like they've been home every game. So yeah, they're 6-0. Giannis looks great. We all knew Giannis would look great, but the Bucks haven't really been tested yet to a game where they kind of, would need Middleton as that second scorer to help Giannis. So that's the only thing I'll say about the Bucks. 6-0. Yes, they're doing great, but I want to see them get tested.
I will say, I was watching the end of that Bucks-Pistons game the other day, that late game, that was a point I wanted to bring up. So thank you for bringing this up, actually, because without Middleton, that late game offense, and Giannis had 5 fouls, it was pretty gross. Yeah. And that's why they had trouble closing that game away. If Holiday's jumper isn't going, they really don't. And mind you, Connaughton was out as well. But listen to the guys we're talking about. We're talking about older Drew Holiday and Pat Connaughton you have to rely on. They really need Middleton back in a way. The only thing I'm going to say about my Cleveland Cavaliers is my favorite stat looking at good teams throughout the year is the point differential, and that plus 12 in 6 games.
Yeah, that's wild,
it's very boosted up by blowing out the Bulls right now. Right, but
the Bulls aren't a bad team.
No, but I'm just saying it's one game is skewing the data for 6 games at the moment. So I think that'll go down. But that
overtime victory against us too, though, that ended up being like 9-10 points, I believe. I think it was 9.
Yeah, it ended up getting away from it. But that's just the one thing I'm looking for is if the Cavs can keep that up, or not even at that range, but at around 5, 4, 5,
doing it without Garland too.
That's
is he playing tonight? He is playing tonight. Okay.
Yep. Let's go to the West, though, because that's also going into one of my points here. Talk about the point differential. Look at the Dallas Mavericks in the 10 spot with the second best point differential in the West. And I think that is the telltale sign of the Dallas Mavericks season this year, though. They're going to be so like one way or the other because that offense is really their engine. And if they aren't shooting outside of Luka in those games, it's going to be tough. But I feel like that team should be like in the top 4 conversation by the end of it, too.
Well, the crazy thing with the Mavs is you talk about having the Cavs game be the one skewed. The Mavs had the one game that skewed their point differential. They beat the Grizzlies by, I think, 40 points, which was a crazy when they killed the Grizzlies. But other than that, win or loss, Mavs it has been a tight game down to the wire every single time besides that. And the Mavs have just been weird, and this is the reason I get so frustrated with the Mavs, because you have a guy like Luka who's averaging, I think, almost 37 points a game so far. He's been basically flirting with a triple-double every night, but they just don't have consistent enough outside shooting with Luka. And you have Christian Wood had a couple great games to start. Dinwiddie's shown some flashes. But you guys got guys like Hardaway and Finney-Smith who have just inconsistent from outside. Bullock can go 4 for 4 from one night from 3, and then go 1 from 6 the next night. And it's just when you have a superstar like Luka and you want to build around him, you want to get more consistency around him than inconsistency. And that's why I think we see the Mavs like this, where there will be a night they score 130 because Luka will get his teammates open, give them wide open threes. And if they make them and the Mavs are shooting 60-65% from 3 that night, guess what? They're beating you by 20-30 points. Doesn't matter what team they're up against. But then you have games where it doesn't matter what Luka's doing. He can put up video game type numbers. Doesn't matter if the shooters around him are combined like 2 of 20 from outside. The Mavs are in a battle against anyone. We saw that, I think, against the Thunder, where they lost in overtime despite Luka going bonkers. And it feels like I'm repeating myself, but it's the 3rd straight year. It's the same old Mavs. It's like I know you want to build shooters around Luka. I completely understand that, but you got to find a little more consistency. And I know Christian Wood has shown a couple flashes this year. He's actually looked pretty good coming off the bench. But if the Mavs want to actually become a legitimate threat to win a championship, there has to be more consistency than Luka run the offense and kick it outside and hope we make our threes.
And the other thing, Steve, is I think you can have those inconsistent scores around your star if you're a team that can also turn around and tighten the boots up and play half-court defense for a few possessions and count on your team to get a few stops when it matters. That's never been the Mavs' identity since Luka's been there. And it sure isn't this year. These are things we were calling for in the offseason. Like, put more consistent scorers around her, and then you around Luka, and you need to be able to defend. Like, you can get away with Reggie Bullock being your shooter on your team if your whole starting five is, a high-powered offensive guys. Not if it's just Luka and that's one of his better shooters around him. That's not going to cut it. They don't play half-court defense. So as much as I think the 10 seed will change for them, they might be closer to 500 than we thought, which is what they're sitting at right now. If someone doesn't step up or if they don't make a change, because obviously it's still so early. But something I'm noticing that now that I'm looking at these standings, I did say last week that the Jazz and Spurs, we could blink an eye and turn around and next week and they'll be at the bottom of the West. They're still the 3 and 4 seed, guys.
Yep.
The
Jazz are 6
and 2. The Warriors, the Clippers, 3 and 5, 3 and 4 down there right now. Like, the
West is a mess compared to the East.
And the West, guys,
the Lakers are one of the worst teams in the league.
Oklahoma City's got a winning record.
Well, Shea is maybe it's taken a level. He might have taken a leap.
Yeah.
He might have taken a leap.
I think he kind of took that leap last year, but people didn't really realize it because it was at the end of the year. Yeah. He is super.
Honestly, I think, Donnie, you and I had Shea in some props by the end of last year where we were just like, he had like 37 last night. Like, yes, we're gonna bet that. Like, I think that we were hitting that. And he's been continuing that. And honestly, they have good young pieces. And imagine what they would look like with Chet Holmgren.
Oh, and Josh Giddey's been hurt for a few games this year. It's just been Shea. It's crazy. OKC has so much potential because not only do they have, you'll have Giddey this year. He's finally healthy again, and then hopefully Chet next year. But you got picks on picks on picks on picks on picks, and you can turn those picks into assets. You can turn those picks into players. You can turn them into the other picks and trade up. You can do whatever you want. OKC has so much, untapped potential. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but it's nice to see them winning games right now with potentially, the face of their franchise out for the year with an injury. Yeah. If you're an OKC fan, you got to feel good for the first time, I think, since you had KD and Westbrook there.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, isn't it wild because, talking about the Thunder, talking about the Jazz, talking about the Spurs, all three teams that we thought would be in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, like who are we looking at that's realistically in it? I mean, the Rockets are doing a hell of a job down there at 1-7.
Well, the Lakers are going to create a super team in New Orleans. That's what's going to happen.
I was going to say, the New Orleans has the Lakers pick, so like they better start playing.
Zion and Wembanyama together would be.
Adam Silver might just have to shut the shit down if that happens.
The Magic being very sneaky, being competitive in a lot of these games, and still keeping that record.
And how good the Pelicans have been with Zion and Ingram hurt. I mean, Zion missed a few games. Ingram's been out for a few, and they haven't missed a beat. They haven't missed a beat. Trey Murphy has looked unbelievable, unbelievable so far this year, coming off the bench.
Pelicans,
if the Lakers just are bad because you got LeBron, AD, and then whatever else you got on that team, and they're actually losing, and they're not going to really have any desire to win games, especially if they don't think they're. I think they'll make a trade, but who knows? It doesn't even matter if it's Wembanyama. If the Pelicans get a high pick, that's terrifying. Doesn't matter who it is.
I mean, at this rate, there's no way around it. Like, I don't think the Lakers are a fixable situation.
I
That's
don't
crazy
either.
for me to say for a LeBron James led team. I'm gonna watch. I haven't really locked into a Lakers game yet this year. Successfully avoided those
Not
two
missing-
late
you're not
opening
missing
season
anything,
Pelicans,
games.
Lakers tonight.
It's happening tonight. I have the time tonight. I'm gonna sit. It's gonna be my whole. Here's the annoying thing today, guys. This is the Jake completely topic. Games of both teams that I love to watch and have out of market packages to watch, both on national TV tonight. Like, I don't like that these usually scrub teams. No one wants the Cavs on national TV. No one wants the Sabres on national TV.
Yeah.
How does it end up the same night? So I'm working the streams heavy tonight.
Yeah, you got
But
the
as I was gonna say,
screens
Lakers
going.
nice league pass.
Dude, Pelicans Lakers is going to be fun either way. I mean, I am.
It's fun for a lot of different reasons.
I am shocked that's not on national TV. I am shocked
It
that they
is,
didn't put LeBron's on.
Grizzlies Blazers is
Yeah. No, I with no Dame.
Dame
right?
and John. Oh, no Dame. Okay, yeah, that's
No
right.
Dame.
Yeah. Do we want to get into Celtics Cavs here?
Yeah,
might as
let's
well.
end with that.
Let's end with it. Dunny, we had a crazy affair that you were at Friday
Yeah,
night in the
boots on the
Garden.
ground, man.
I
That was a
did
hell
not get
of
to
a
watch.
game.
I got to watch most of the second half in overtime. So I want to hear from you about just your thoughts on both teams in that game. It felt like a heavyweight affair, though. Like, I was listening on the radio actually for the first half because I was back home in Buffalo. And so League Pass, for some reason, doesn't work for Cavs games in Buffalo, even though you can't watch Cavs games on TV in Buffalo. I hate blackout
That's
rules,
strange.
dumbest things in the world. So I was listening until I was at the casino actually, losing money in the slots, listening to the Cavs Celtics first half. Then I watched the second half. So that was the amount of the game that I saw. But from what I could hear, I love listening to games on the radio because you can hear the crowd just so much purer. And that place sounded insane for an early October matchup between the Cavs and the Celtics. And then it looked that intense watching it on TV. So give me your breakdown of the whole night.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying, like, I usually leave any sports game I go to when my team loses. Like, I usually leave pretty pissed. I'll give it to like myself the benefit of the doubt. It was, and this may have to do that. It was also my birthday that day that I kept good spirits, but I left there being like, damn, that was just like a good game. Like, of course, like South had like a bit of a collapse in overtime. But like the back and forth, the game, like the Celtics were up like 15, I think, at one point in the third quarter, and it didn't feel like a blown lead though. You know what I mean? Like both teams are just playing that good. They had their own runs. I mean, the Cavs came out and punched us in the mouth. Like you guys were up big in the first quarter.
Yeah.
You got the Karis LeVert game.
What got into him?
He always kills us, bro. He always kills the Celtics.
And then he had 1 point on Sunday against.
I saw that too.
Literally infuriating, bro. Karis LeVert is a Boston Celtics killer. He did it on the Nets. He did it on the Pacers. Oh my god, man. The Cavs now. But yeah, like you said, man, the place was electric. I mean, Boston Garden is never. It's never anything to scoff at. It's always pretty electric for any sports event going on in there. Actually, for the last 4 minutes of regulation and then the whole overtime period, if you guys can believe this, it was weird. We were in the balcony, but we were in like the front row of our section. So we were like elevated a little bit and like there was like glass. And I kept having to have people get up every time like I had to like go get a beer or go to the bathroom or whatever. And it was the fourth quarter, the last time I got up, so I didn't want to like keep making everyone in a row stand up. So I actually stood below the elevator part, just like in front of the people that I was with for the last 4 minutes of regulation and the whole overtime period. And it was honestly electric. I was just like, no, the ushers weren't yelling at me or anything. I was just standing there, like
just vibing,
mesmerized. Jaylen Brown's and one dunk on Donovan Mitchell was insane. Yeah, it was a fantastic game. I mean, any Cavs Celtics game this year, or if they happen to meet in the playoffs, it's going to be must watch. And now we have it tonight.
We do have it tonight. Back in Cleveland tonight. Cleveland is going full out for this national TV appearance. There's a blackout going on, black shirts for every seat in the arena. And I've told my friends to steal one for me because they look sick. Like they're not some cheap, dingy shirts. You should have seen the shirts I got. Speaking of a bad game for you, Dunny. When I went to the playoff series for the Celtics Cavs, they gave me a shirt that it was like looked like it was just like screen printed on it. It was like just said Cleveland. I don't even remember what it said. It was literally just like a regular white T-shirt. Had like a Cavs logo. You could tell they pressed on there, and it said, I really don't remember what it says. It just said Cleveland in black letter, whatever. It looks very nice. So they're taking it a big deal. Another great place when it gets raucous. It'll have a great environment. Darius Garland's back tonight. So
Yeah,
all
that's
those
huge.
things would make me want to be like, oh yeah, Cavs, like the way they played Friday with Garland back should be good. But I think the Celtics are going to be pissed and probably a little more motivated and love coming into that place. Tatum loves coming into that place and lighting up the Cavs. Like he has had some great games there. Jalen too had some great.
One of you guys retweeted from the Happy Hour Hoops account today. Tatum's first points was in that.
Well, that's because our mutual friend Brett sent it to us in part of his shit talking this morning. He just just a little emoji or whatever in there. But yeah, I mean, great moments for Tatum in there. I'm terrified of the Jays in any amount of time, any kind of game, and think they're going to come in firing. I think the over is a safe bet. I know that me and you both have the opposite sides of the teams.
I know.
Obviously,
I didn't see until we were starting this that's who you took.
Yeah, well, I changed it. I was just like, I can't not. Like, I would look so soft if the Cavs and Celtics are playing each other, and I don't pick the Cavs here. Like, I'm gonna pick the Hawks. Like, I don't
especially
even like the Hawks.
Especially after you won Friday, and
Friday.
You can take the points at the Cavs tonight. They don't even have to win.
I know. They could lose by one. I'm safe.
Total's only 220. That's a low total for this game. What I expected.
And granted, because
they're expecting the lockdown after they're expecting the lockdown after 41. You know, it was 40 bombs and 35 bombs from everybody involved on Friday.
So Jake,
both Mitchell and LeVert scored over 40, right? They both had 41.
Both had 41.
It was their Kyrie LeBron game. They
insane, dude.
You could imagine I was in disbelief. I mean, every time Mitchell scored, I'm like, yeah, this is just
overtime. Also, was ridiculous though. LeVert does not make those shots game to game. Like he's just making step back,
and it was like
people over. Like
the Celtics kind of like put their foot down the first like 45 seconds of overtime too. I'm like, all right, like this is great.
Scared. Yeah,
and then it was just like boom, boom. Like, bro, what is even happening right now? But no, Mitchell, man, that was a treat to watch him in person, because I know I've mentioned this on this pod before, but like that's what I love most about going to Celtics games is like the opponent. I got to check off the players I've seen in person. And like obviously I tally it with like notable guys, but like I had never seen Mitchell in person before. That was awesome. He's electric, man. Like that's just what he does. And I think obviously Cleveland's not like a huge market for basketball, but bigger than Utah. So I think more eyes will be on him. More eyes will be on him this year. It's good for him.
He's killing it so far this year.
Yeah. I do want to ask you guys though, because we mentioned.
Well, I will say too, Anthony Edwards is finding out how hard it is to play with Rudy Gobert. So Mitch, I think, and the way Mitchell looks without Gobert, I think we're learning about what it's like to play with Rudy Gobert with those two guys.
Yep. I do want to ask you guys this though. Garland back tonight. We mentioned it. I would imagine this changes the rotation a bit for the Cavs.
That's the most interesting thing.
I would assume LeVert comes off the bench, right?
LeVert's starting, I think.
Is he starting tonight?
Is starting.
Is he? I don't know. I don't know if they.
I would assume. It depends if they're limiting Garland or not, right? Because if Garland's a full go, I'd assume they'd have LeVert come off the bench, give him some bench scoring, and they'd still keep LeVert in there, right?
Opening night, LeVert was the starter with them.
He was? Okay.
Yeah. So that I'm just wondering if JB just goes back to what he wanted to see with his rotation opening night, because he never really got
true.
See it at all. It is, the starters are out 14 minutes ago. Garland, Mitchell, LeVert, Mobley, Allen.
Okay.
So
Garland's going to get a full go. There's no limit on him tonight, you think?
What I heard, that's for, okay. I mean, he just is supposed to be just going tonight. I assume that it'll be like maybe 30 minutes or something like that. But I don't think he lost any of his conditioning or anything. He's still been practicing, running around.
Yeah.
Just with
and
his
he was
eyes
close
shut.
to coming back Friday, from what I understand.
Just like this.
Yeah, they were thinking about it Friday, and then I think they just decided to give it the weekend and just give it a little bit of extra time.
My point with all that was, what do you obviously like no brainer rather have Garland in the lineup, but we haven't seen much of the Mitchell Garland. Also, Mitchell's looked like a better defender, so this argument argument may just have no legs. But do you worry a little bit about the defense with Garland being back, because you can't go as big as you guys had been going.
Yeah.
And this is kind of more specific to like the type of players the Celtics have, I guess, because I don't know if you're in a game against like, well, I guess
most
Brooklyn.
teams it's not going to matter.
Yeah, like Tatum and Brown are such like hybrid guard forwards that are tough to guard as is. And then you have, and then like Brogdon, Smart, and Derek White aren't small either.
So
I'm interested about that.
With the way I've noticed it, at least the last now 2 years of JB Bickerstaff, he's just going to put whoever the guy is that he thinks is the best matchup and just go with that, especially with Mobley and Allen down low. Like, he has no problem. Like, it's going to be LeVert on Tatum and Mitchell on Brown. Now, those are both plus matchups for those guys, but he also knows he has two giants down low that are going to make everything difficult in the paint. And if Tatum and Brown are going to beat him as jump shooters, then they're going to beat him as jump shooters. Like, that's fine with them. And so I think that that's like where his mindset is with this team, because Mitchell has been getting, like, I think Mitchell probably had Jalen a lot of that game, checked him a lot of that game. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Mitchell's been getting, you know, high profile scores in his matchups in a lot of these games, not the whole time, but been taking on those responsibilities. And I think it's just because JB wants, like the thing about LeVert starting tonight again too. He wants to load up those two big guys with as much offense as possible, because he thinks that they can just clean it up. Whatever defensively, he can scheme it and they can clean it up as well as anything else. Now, I will say Mitchell is definitely giving more of an effort defensively than he ever has in Utah, but that's also like new trade bump, like trying to impress his teammates. I don't know if that stays consistent throughout the regular season.
Phase, right? He's still in the honeymoon phase.
Exactly.
It could be like what you were talking about, though. Like, he's just playing more freely without a guy like Rudy Gobert.
He seems happier. I mean,
it was just so sour. It was just so sour in Utah. Like, it's like this could just be the real Donovan Mitchell, which is scary. But like, he might have just been like, I'm not giving you guys a full effort. Like, you guys aren't making trades. We're just consistently good,
Mitchell
but not great.
I mean, I'm not just saying that from the like, he might have taken another lead.
Dude, you deserve the victory. Every Cavs fan deserves the victory laps right now, for sure.
Well, I think in a few months we're going to have some crazy who would you rather have Donovan Mitchell compared to other stars if he keeps playing the way he is.
And this was a dude people were saying not a legit one. Like,
exactly.
Get into the Mitchell. Can he get into the Mitchell, Tatum, Luka conversations doing anything this year? Anything. I'm not saying he can either. I'm wondering from somebody people who are more objective. Because right now, what is he averaging? He's averaging 32 points a game. I don't think he keeps that up. But if he's averaging above, and he's got 7 assists too, like it is comparable to those numbers.
If those assist numbers stay there, I think if those assists and still 5 numbers stay there,
4.5 rebounds, I should say.
Yeah, I think if those numbers stay there, then he like kind of has to. But I do still think right now that there's things that Tatum and Luka do that Mitchell just can't,
and
or
those
at least that I haven't seen.
To be fair, between Giannis, Jokic, obviously those two are freaks. So it's Tatum and Luka are the guys right there with those guys. So that's a stretch. But Morant, like those kind of guards,
Morant is a big one too, because I think before the year started, we were like, it's a no-brainer, Booker over Donovan Mitchell, and Booker's been doing incredible himself as well. The Suns have been great, but Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, it might be closer than we thought.
Yeah.
That's the one where I think I would go before I go to Tatum, Luka. I think you would have to go.
I'm with you there too, because that was kind of it started as that too when the Suns were coming up before they made the finals and everything. It really was Mitch. There was like an undercurrent of Booker at first, and Mitch was like, "Oh, but they're winning games," and then Booker eventually overtakes him in that position and everything else. It's just interesting because we talked about the Mitchell trade before it happened, potential with the Cavs, all of us. And then afterwards, obviously I was more excited afterwards, just being like, okay, we got this 25 point a game scorer. Like, worst case scenario, it adds a boost of that. But he's been so much more of that. But I don't think I would have imagined that. I don't think there's any scenario what I would have imagined this version of him. And especially without Darius Garland. was the best player on this team before Mitchell showed up.
And I don't think it's a good thing Garland got hurt, but maybe Garland getting hurt kind of helped Mitchell just run that offense for 5 games. Kind of just
feel like a blessing in disguise?
It kind of does. It'll be interesting to see what happens now with Garland back on the court with Mitchell at the same time. But we watched Mitchell was just handed the keys to the offense as soon as Garland got hurt. They said, "We're running the offense through you." I think he had like 9 assists the first game Garland was hurt. Like he was the playmaker, which is something we didn't see much at all in Utah. So that's first off, that's a huge confidence boost for a guy with a new team, right? New players around him. The second game into the year, midway through the first, you're running our offense, and he's earned it because he's been the best player arguably on the court in every single one of the Cavs games so far this year.
Good thing too is less minutes for Seti and less minutes for Okoro.
Well, listen, hey, I'm still on Chetty Island because when he is streaky, he
was hitting his shots against us because everyone
he's good defensively too. I'm done.
Okoro sucked.
My friend just calls him a liar. Apparently the first game of the season he was watching.
Brett was telling me this.
Yes, just yelling at Okoro, calling him a liar because there was a big Cleveland.com piece that was a big puff piece on Isaac Okoro and talked about how much he has worked on his 3-point range and his jumper, and he has yet Stevie to hit a 3-point shot.
And
not a good
his
look.
First attempt hit the side of the backboard, I'm pretty sure as well.
I feel more and more vindicated that when we did our first draft podcast and I felt stupid for not knowing who the Cavs' top 5 pick was, Isaac Okoro, more and more vindicated every day by not believing in that pick.
No, he's been real bad since he's been into the league. Man.
It's never been good. It's literally never been good. Can we talk about Jason Tatum for a second, though? Because as much as I want to talk about Donovan Mitchell and whatever else is exciting new toy over here, I mean, it's not what Tatum's doing, I think, as much for me, Dunny, as it is he looks so much more like a star. He knows that he's the star and knows that he's probably the best player on the floor every night. And I don't think he knew that before. I don't think he realized how good he could be. And then last year, something clicked last year. And he has realized it, and he is carrying it into that every single game. And Jaylen Brown's always had that confidence, so he doesn't look any different. It's just the results are catching up to him. Now it looks like Tatum's confidence is catching up to the skill set.
Yeah, it's almost like they both share the same mindset now, because before Jaylen was the only guy who really showed no emotion on his face, didn't smile, mugged after a dunk. Jaylen's never really a guy who bitches at the refs. And Tatum, that was his fault last year. He would smile a lot, and when he made a mistake, pretty careless, or pick up stupid texts. Now it's he still argues with the ref for sure, but now it's stone face, not looking to argue with anyone when he doesn't need to, going straight through people instead of trying to just go for contact. So mindset, I think, is definitely a big thing for Tatum this year.
Averaging 55% from the field right now, which is fucking ridiculous.
And you know what's crazy? This stat that I saw the other day, I might get some of this a little wrong, but I know this is pretty much true for the most part. It may have changed, obviously, because I think this was Monday morning I saw this stat. Jason Tatum is 10th in true shooting percentage in the NBA, and the 9 people ahead of him only have 8 shots a game, and he's doing it on 19 attempts a game or something.
That's ridiculous.
So he's 10th in true shooting percentage, and he has doubled shot attempts from all the people in front of him.
He's 55, 40, 90 right now.
Yeah,
which is elite company to be that 50, 40, 90, but he's not only 50, 40.
30. Yeah.
And averaging 30, and he only played 27 minutes on Sunday, so he only had 23 points, and that probably is the only reason he's as low as he is on scoring. He could be at 32, 33 pretty easily after that. So, and I expect him to do that tonight. I expect 35 points from him tonight, without a doubt. Just kind of penciling that in for the Celtics.
Yeah, because that was the thing. I feel like there were streaks of the game Friday night against the Cavs where it was where are the Jays at? I feel like they haven't got a bucket in a while. And then box score. Of course, it went to overtime, but overtime games count for stats too. You look down both of them had 31 apiece. It's like, oh yeah, they were there.
They played. They did all
They
right.
just do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Tatum's gotten to that point right now where he's so good when he just scores 30. It's like another day at the office. Like before at this point last year when Tatum was having 25 plus 30-point nights, we were like, oh, Tatum's playing great. He's doing great. Now I look Tatum up. Tatum went for 38 and 6. Okay. Like good night.
Yeah, casual.
And that's where you want to be if you're a Celtics fan, because that's where Tatum's been trying to get to, is where he's that type of superstar, where you just expect these type of numbers every single night.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. It's wild. We're in for a good one, man. You know, if it's anything like Friday night, it's gonna be good.
That was a fun one. That was a really fun one.
It's just gonna be rocking there. Anything else before we go, guys?
I think we're good. We got a loaded slate tonight. I know you guys were talking about that game. We briefly touched on it, but Pelicans Lakers is just going to be a fun game just for the type of players you'll see in that. But we got a loaded slate. I think it's 10, 11 games on tonight.
A lot of fun games.
I'm excited. Hawks Knicks. You know, Trae Young owns the Garden, so I'm excited to see that. Jazz Mavs. Jazz have been red hot. Luka usually plays great against the Jazz. He's averaging 37 a game this year. I think 37. The craziest part, he's averaging 37 points a game, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. He's shooting 22% from 3.
Oh my God.
And they're averaging 37. I mean, you got Raptors, Spurs. Spurs are 5-2. They have to lose at some point, right? They have to start losing at some point.
I like the
and
Raptors.
Then I wish Damian was healthy, but Grizzlies Trailblazers is always a fun league pass game where, you know, Anthony Simons, I know Dame not being there hurts Blazers, but Simon's been unbelievable when they need him to be this year.
Memphis only 4.5-point favorites there too, so that's going to be that'll be a good one regardless.
Interesting spread, yeah.
It is.
That's a good ESPN. I mean, both the ESPNs are great. You go from Celtics Cavs to Grizzlies Blazers. How can you complain about that on a Wednesday?
The Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is going to be electric tonight on a Wednesday night. They're packing that. They're trying to pack that place out too, Johnny. They sent a thing on Friday that was like 50% off tickets for everybody if they wanted. For Wednesday's game. Like it's all out for first. It's the first national TV game in Cleveland, I think, since LeBron's been there. So
that's sick.
I mean,
is that true?
I think so.
That is.
Why else would they show up there?
That can't be true. There's no way that could be true.
Yeah, that can't be true.
I guarantee you it's true. We last year we were looking at the schedule like, can we get an NBA team?
Yeah, that's wild. You guys didn't have one last year. It's not like you guys were.
No, they didn't flex us in. They didn't flex us into any of the late games. This one was actually a late flex. I think this was supposed to be a different game, and it was only announced to ESPN a couple weeks ago, like after the season started. So
yeah, it was probably supposed to be like Heat Nets or something.
Yeah,
probably. I'm used to this though. The Bills just had their first Sunday night game in front of fans in 15 years. The Cavs don't play on prime time. And then, like I said, the night I have League Pass. I don't have cable. I have League Pass. I have ESPN Plus to watch the Sabres. And both these fucking teams are on national TV. They need to be bad again. It's not worth it.
Nah, you love it, Jake. You love it.
No, because the streams have been rough lately, guys. The streams have not been. It's been. You know, if you're an illegal sports streamer, you know there's sometimes where it's like a month where it's amazing, like perfect quality, almost up to speed, everything, and then you get some where the leagues are really cracking down and it's slow. They're cutting out. Broadcast suspended. You got to go find a new one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe I can give you one of my 4 League Pass accounts that I paid for and then got refunded. see if any of those work for you.
Let's see what we can do. All right, I think that's it then, boys. So follow us at Heavy Hour Hoops 1. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoy Celtics, Cavs, and the whole slate, and we'll be back next week. Hopefully, not talking about the Brooklyn Nets.